Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I joined the Patreon, okay? I'm trying to build up the Patreon. That's my greatest pitch, is I'm going to shame you into joining the Patreon. For $3, you get an energy update every week. For $5, you get my In Bed with Paranormal Karen, which is a podcast that I do, just me, all the things I'm looking at. And then for $10, you get the classes along with live, a place where you can learn to read live for strangers. I know a lot of you are trying to learn to read and you're reading on your friends. You join, we have a Zoom meeting, you read with strangers. I match you up with different people. And for $15, you get the whole kaputz. If that's a kaputz. Is that a kaputz, Andrea?
I'm not sure if that's a kaputz. I'm not up on my Yiddish, but that sounds like a ton of fun, though.
Thank you. It is fun, and I work hard, and I want to, I don't know, I kind of want to lean into that growing. So anyways, that's all good. Thanks for listening. Today, one of your favorites, Andrea Land, is here. Andrea is in my phone book as Andrea Schumann Resonance, because that is how we first met. If you're not following her on Instagram or TikTok, which is Groovinggoddess, follow her now, because there is so much there is so much about this. First of all, Andrea, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous because I'm getting to talk to you, and thank you for that lovely introduction. And it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. It's the highlight of my year when I have a chance to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. And thanks for being on the Predictions podcast too. That was great. Oh my God, this one is a whopper.
Oh yeah, it'll be interesting to see what everybody thinks about it after, and I'll be interested to see what everybody else said as well.
Yeah, it's I'm not well, we're already into it, but we're already in 2024 when this comes out. We're struggling with the back end of 2023 right now. But so the Schumann resonance, I want to talk about that first, and we're going to talk about time loops and all kinds of stuff. The Schumann resonance, do we say that's the heartbeat of is it the sun? Is it the planet? What actually is the Schumann resonance in layman's terms?
The Schumann resonance is considered the heartbeat of the Earth. And it's not inside the Earth, which is what a lot of people think when you say heartbeat, because they think, oh, the heart of something, it must be inside. But actually, the Schumann resonance are frequencies that are generated by the lightning activity between the ground and the upper atmosphere of the Earth.
Oh.
And that creates Earth's geomagnetic field, its electromagnetic field, between those layers of atmosphere. And the interesting thing about it is that it has a general set point of about 7.8 hertz. And humans tend to sync up with that, as well as most other beings on the planet, animals. We don't know about the plants, but the animals definitely all have their own electromagnetic field, just like we have our own electromagnetic field, and we all tend to sync up with whatever's going on with the Earth.
You know what was funny when you were saying like the sort of the lightning between the Earth and the outside? All I got was that image from War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, where they were coming, the aliens weren't coming from the sky, they were coming out of the ground. Do you know the scene I mean?
Yes, I do know what you're talking about. And it's interesting because there's something called, we could talk about lightning for hours, because it's really when I started diving into all this, because it started with the Schumann resonance and then also the solar weather, the media was scaring the crap out of me with all their stuff 3-4 years ago. So then I started learning about it more so that I wouldn't be afraid anymore. But the the lightning, there's ball lightning, and what you're talking about, lightning coming up from the ground, that's called sprite.
Ah.
And they can make all kinds of unbelievable displays in the sky that you would swear you were looking at, a visitor. So, but who knows if I'm kind of in one of those spaces, which is why I took some time off. And I'm just coming back when you hear this from a 4 month sabbatical, is that I needed just some time and space to observe for a while instead of trying to immediately put out content and be in that cycle of really fast turnover, so that I could start to see the patterns a little more clearly. And I'm kind of at this point like, yes, we understand things, but at the same time, do we know anything? I don't know.
I love that you did that. I kind of did that with the podcast where I literally I think it was in July, I had the year's podcasts done and in the can. So all they had to do was be posted. And it was such a relief. And there is something about not having enough bandwidth sort of in my brain. This is a word I think I've been using a lot with people. So to have that bandwidth to observe or to just be quiet, I hope we can all take more time to do that, because it's all so different right now. Weird little here's why you should join my Patreon. I teach tarot. The holly vine, the holly plant from the holly leaves of the holly from the holly tree are on the crown in the Ace of Swords, because holly trees protect from lightning.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm going to have to go dive into that, because, lightning and solar weather are not directly connected, but there does seem to be a relationship between the Earth's rhythms and the solar cycle, with the Schumann resonance a bit. The Schumann resonance is also considered like part of Earth's nervous system, which we are a part of. So basically, humans are part of Earth's nervous system and part of Gaia's nervous system. And so it's really, even more so than normal, vital for us to be finding that bandwidth like you're talking about, and be able to find those moments of peace and learn how to have mastery over your nervous system. Because the main thing that this solar maximum, which I know I'm going to need to explain that, but just we'll get to that. During this solar maximum, which is, maybe the next 18 months is when it'll be most intense, that is going to be firing your nervous system constantly, and also producing just general chaos as things are collapsing and being rebuilt, and as people are having a much greater number of spiritual awakenings, and not everybody responds well to that. So all of that means that there will be chaos going on out there externally, but it's really not, it's kind of like, it's not your business, not your monkey, not your circus. And it's really important for us to learn to calm our own nervous system and work with whatever works for you, whether that's meditation or yoga or learning vagus reset moves, or vagus nerve reset moves, or tapping,
Yes, or art. I find that if I can get lost in art.
Oh, yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
And they say, I hate when people say that. Now I'm saying it. If you find peace within yourself, that is what helps peace on earth. And I find it very funny, because this is the only time that if you go, you know what, I just want peace, people are like, it's not the time for peace. Get in and fight, pick a side. And it's like, All right. Well, that's but I do feel like yeah, when you kind of have that peace inside, you can step back and watch it with and I don't think people should ever be afraid. I think we're both an advocate of that. And I think that's what the media and
Yes.
everybody else is trying to do. They're always trying to make you afraid because that is a frequency that they can control you from. So I think usually if you listen to this podcast and you're kind of paranormalish, you're not afraid to die. So it's just what's in between there. So, yeah, if you can kind of find that peace within yourself and then just try and project that into the world, I feel like that's all we got right now because it's I don't believe the news. Anyways, that's another topic.
Yeah.
So you're right. Finding it in ourselves calms everything.
hmm it truly does. It truly does. So part of the reason I was like, hey, let's have this conversation is because we have all of these different things going on this year. And, part of my prediction was that I believe we're most likely to be getting the solar maximum early, and it'll be between like July and October of 2024.
Okay. And what's the solar maximum again? Should we go there yet?
Yes. I was just going to get there. So the sun, and this is what leads into time loops, which is what we were all excited about in the first place. But the solar cycle is an 11-year cycle during which the solar activity waxes and wanes. So you could think of it like the moon has a cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only instead of it being 28 days, the sun has a cycle that's 11 years. And so for every cycle, there is a minimum, which means the least amount of activity, not very many sunspots or solar flares or anything happening. And then there's a maximum, which means the biggest and most flary time of that cycle. And so that's what we're moving into. Now, it's very interesting how all this has happened. And I'm not saying this just to brag, I'm just putting it out there for context of how it can be so important, especially if you feel called to grid work, which is basically like Reiki for the planet, for lack of a better description that isn't long. But if you are called to that and you are attuned to this, you will have a better sense of what's going on than NASA does. The people, because 2 years ago, NASA was still saying that the maximum wouldn't happen until 2025 or 2026. And I kept saying, no, I don't think so. That's not what I'm feeling and seeing. And it took them a couple years to catch up with me.
Yay! I love that. I trust you more than NASA. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, to put an extra spin on that, oh my gosh, I almost peed my pants laughing this morning because there was an article about NASA. They had sent up a probe to get samples from this asteroid, Bennu, to try to, understand it better. And the thing came back, and there's a headline this morning. 2 months later, and NASA still can't open the sample capsule.
Ah! Oh my God.
So I thought to myself, I posted, I was like, have you tried running it under hot water and breaking the seal?
Have you banged it with a knife around the top?
Exactly. So funny. But so their prediction model now is showing what I was feeling a couple of years ago. And my group in my Patreon with our grid workers, it's like we know several hours or days before that we're going to have different activity, whether it's solar flares or not. So as we're recording this, we are actually in the middle of the biggest solar storm we've had since 2017. And we just had the largest flare we've had since 2017. And we're going to be having we're having a solar radiation storm at the moment. And we're also going to have some whopper geomagnetic levels the next couple days and auroras. And so the reason I'm mentioning that is that it's only going to get more intense as we get there. But I also want to reassure everyone, because you're probably going to see a whole bunch of headlines the closer it gets, talking about the infamous Carrington event, which happened in the 1800s. And it was a very big event, and that was when they had telegraphs, and the telegraph machines had paper, and so the wires got hot and they caught on fire. And so the media keeps using that to spin it as, a flare could set us back in the Stone Age or completely take everything out. And the reality of it is that it will be, a pretty intense period of activity, but it's not that, it's going to take out the entire internet or make the whole world go dark. It doesn't work that way anymore. But that is what we're moving into. And so I had an interesting realization about the solar cycle, looking back on my own life and some of the cycles of Earth and the way all of these numbers seem to connect with each other. So that's where the time loop thing comes in. But I'll shut up for a second in case you have questions.
You know what? I actually had a weird comment. I just did a podcast on this in my Patreon. Did you see the movie that the Obamas produced called Leave the Planet with Julie Roberts and Ethan Hawke?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, you probably see it by the time this comes out, but it's very interesting because it is. So the whole point of this movie is to scare you. The internet is down. I can't use my GPS. I'm stuck here. It's not really a movie as in a story. It's just lots of things happening. And my favorite, right? And I don't like any politicians at all. I don't think we've ever had an honest president, or I don't stand behind, I'm really an anarchist now. And and one of my favorite phrases is, the devil will tell you 10 truths to tell you one lie. And that's all this movie was. It was all things that could happen, terrify you, right. terrify you. And then in the middle, the one lie sits right there when the guy says to Julia Roberts, my friend in the Pentagon, or whoever, my high up friend, and he said the scariest thing is that no one is in charge. There is no evil cabal. They don't know either. And I thought, oh, you built that whole movie to plant that seed, because I still believe that, whether it's BlackRock or the World Health Organization, but you will find this movie interesting because it's very well done in that it's a creepy movie, but it is very much like, be afraid. What if the internet goes down? What about terrorism? What about, it's exactly what you were just like, don't worry about.
Yeah, it is so interesting that you just brought that up, because I know exactly what you're talking about now. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been hearing the trailers for it when I'm listening to podcasts, because unfortunately it has now infiltrated some of that.
Yeah.
So I can't avoid it. But I keep hearing the trailer for Leave the World Behind.
That's what it is.
And Julia Roberts and blah, blah. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to have to watch it now, because I know what happens every time these things come out is that then people have a lot of questions for me,
Yes, and people will say, I think they're saying it's more a terrorist than the planet changing, but it's really, if you can watch it from an entertainment purpose, it's a great movie. But it's really the conspiracy theorists on TikTok lost their minds on this.
There's sure
3 6s in the corner, and I don't know if you've seen this one woman that's insane. Look, these are the letters of the satanic demon so and so, and I was like, okay. They got exactly what they wanted out of this movie. They sent people on a wild goose chase and made them all afraid, and they kept going, they're telling us what they're gonna do, and I was like, I don't think so.
One of the things about Schumann resonance, also in regard to timelines and time loops, is that you can see there's different Schumann activity when there are timeline jumps, large collective jumps. We
Oh.
all have little timeline shifts in our lives all the time. A lot of times we're not even aware of it. But as you become more awake, you tend to become more aware of it and you notice those things. But
Yes.
so the Schumann resonance kind of gives me an indication of, okay, we just had this major download from solar activity, and now we've processed that and we've made a jump. And so it'll usually look like one big pulse or sometimes two tall pillars of activity. But at any rate, like you can kind of track that. But here's what's funny is I'm about to like throw numbers at you, but I'm not talking about the mark of the beast.
And hold on one second. I know. Let's take a break to do an ad and come back. We'll be right back.
Are you a seeker who craves a life of authenticity and freedom, but can't seem to get unstuck from experiences of duality? My name is Z, and I spent years stuck in victimhood, craving enlightenment, but trapped in a cycle of 2 steps forward and what felt like 100 steps back. I felt like I was drowning in fear and shame until I started learning about the nervous system. It turns out that while we are spiritual beings, we are only able to be here because of these physical bodies, and the nervous system is just trying to keep us alive by bringing us back to fight, flight, freeze responses. We can get stuck in these defense states, or we can gain resilience by developing a respectful and trusting relationship with our nervous system. If you're ready to learn more, check out my YouTube channel and join us for online coaching and courses by going to www.anexperiencer.com. That's anexperiencer.com. See you there.
Okay, not mark of the beast, but some numbers. And then I want to go back because I love when you're talking about the giant collective timeline shift. Okay, go ahead. You're going to give us some numbers. Yay.
Yes. Okay, numbers. So part of the reason I got on this time loop concept is because, okay, solar cycle's 11 years. So many things for Earth are the geological cycles of Earth. They tend to run in 100-year, 1,000-year, 10,000-year, and so on cycles, all keeping in this ones and zeros mathematical, binary system, which it made me think about it. And I was like, okay, so the solar cycle is every 11 years. And if that is part of our development as a species and all that, and then I have had moments, as probably a lot of people have over the last few years, where you've been like, did I really die in 2012? Am I a walk-in? Was I the original person here? Am I on a different timeline? Just asking ourselves all of those questions. And I think it's partially a neurological development of time awareness that we're getting. But what if, and so I'm not saying that I necessarily think this is true or not, but I just think it's something worth exploring for people. Excuse me. What if that solar cycle connects with our development as humans? And even though we're older and we've gone through development and whatnot, we still sort of reset every 11 years, because I tracked back in my own life. I'll be 55 in May.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 5 solar cycles, right? And I was sitting there kind of reviewing backwards, going back through history of my life, like what was happening 11 years ago and what was happening 22 years ago, and so on. And it is shockingly striking that at every 10 or 11-year mark of my life, which also seemed to occur roughly around when the solar maximums were happening, there were major things happening. So, right now we have current reality, but 11 years ago, I got really, really sick, and I had to go on weekly chemo for immune suppression. And then 11 years before that, it was having my first child and getting disabled. And then 11 years before that, it was something else. And so it's like it solidifies so many things in my mind as far as how these periods of time affect our physical health, for sure, and can. Like, not everybody is affected in the same way, and some people are more sensitive than others. And the older you are and the more health conditions you have, obviously, the harder it is going to be on you. But between that and the way there are also, like world events and things that happen. It's like, what is this loop? Am I just, because it sort of feels like I go through, it's like we're going through really whether you think of it in terms of tarot or in terms of astrology, it's like we're going through the fool's journey or the hero's journey over and over again.
Yep. Yeah.
We start at the beginning. Like now we're at the end/beginning of another cycle. And then we get our challenges and we go through the next set of things. And it's like each time you're hopefully getting better at it, and starting to observe it. But just the time loop, like I can't get over the idea that this is happening in such a really rapid cycle, honestly. And obviously, I haven't had time to go back through all the years of human history yet to look at that part of it. But that's what got me on this time loop thing.
So if we try to figure out what is the 11th year of, like, if we try to take 2023, would it be, all right, so if I figure this out on my calculator, so it's 2020, let's try 2020 divided by 11, because I tried 2023. No, how do we get to, what would be the 11th year cycle for the world with 2023? Would it be 2022? No?
Well, what I'm looking at is the solar cycle. So right now, because we're at solar maximum, and so it's like it's not a fully demarcated line.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But so this year we are at the solar maximum ish. So 2024. So 11 years ago, like right now we're actually recording 2023, but 11-ish years ago it was 2012. And then 11-ish years before that it was 2001. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
And so you start going backwards through all these solar cycles and look at world events, and then maybe look at your individual life and what was happening then. It does appear to be some kind of loop.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is kind of what blew my mind when I had that realization. Because I can see it in other people's lives as well that I know, and so it has less to do with how old you are and more to do with how many solar maximums you've experienced and when. But because we know now is a solar maximum, you can kind of, use that to track back and look at your life if you're trying to figure that out and see how that feels. But after I had all this realization, here's where the number thing comes in, and it's funny. But back to poor old NASA. One of the Voyager probes that's been flying up there since the 80s, 70s or 80s, it recently got, the way they described it, it's like a record that has its needle stuck, because it's gone out now to the farthest reaches of interstellar space that we've ever been in. And it's only sending back repeating ones and zeros.
Interesting.
And yeah, isn't it? Because I was like, okay, we have the computer simulation /matrix /multiverse theory, and we have all of this spiritual anthropomorphizing of the universe. But it almost seems like it really is just all an automatic system of some sort. It's a program.
I agree with that.
And so Yeah. And so, what has happened to me during this sabbatical period, which I'll go into ad nauseum in my Patreon and probably some on the public podcast, but is I feel like I have, um, I mean, not mastered the game, but mastered the game for myself and how I interact with the universe. And the more I approach this like it's a program that's running and I need to tell it what to do with authority, the more shit works for me in crazy, unbelievable ways. Like beyond what we usually talk about with synchronicities and manifestations and abundance and all that. This is like, oh, you said you need a person who's like this to do this thing. And then the next person I talk to or the next person I'm referred to is perfect and exactly what I needed.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. And also, I feel like I don't know if it's us or the universe. And then we're going to get into the trickster spirit because there's something about
Right.
that too. But I feel like sometimes when you declare something and you're really clear, like you don't have, and you're not in your own way, you're not scared, you're not, if I was to declare success and I have no fear of success or this or that, it comes really fast. Like I agree with you. You can say it and it'll show up tomorrow. I absolutely agree with that. And it is, do you think it has to do with our personal hangups though? We have to be not only clear, but ready. Or do you think it's pretty much, you're just right now, it is a little bit of be careful what you wish for.
It truly is, because part of what's happening is as the frequencies on Earth continue to elevate and change and allow for more instant co-creation with the universe, because it makes sense, even if all of this is just a computer program, let's say, or simulation, or what, it makes sense that you would not have organisms existing in this system who just wake up out of, a biological evolutionary process and suddenly are omnipotent, like what we would consider omnipotent, you know what I mean? But so it makes sense that it would take time for us to continue to cultivate that. And so it's definitely is, be careful what you wish for. And this doesn't mean that, you have to be paranoid about your thoughts all the time and every word you say and all of that. But what you say with meaning, intention, and authority is definitely powerful. So, this isn't about positive thinking, even. It's more about, because I do think you have to get over, whatever your hangups are and whatever your blocks are from preventing you from connecting with that frequency for yourself.
I think
But
a really good example of this, which I say to people all the time, is don't wish that you're out of your job. Wish that you're in a new, better job, because the universe will throw you out of your job without a problem. But that's not what you don't want. That you want a better job.
Yes, absolutely. It's being precise with your intentions, with your desires, because that's what conjures things. And it's happening so much faster now that, a lot of people aren't necessarily aware or they haven't calibrated it for themselves. But, and it sounds, I love Gaia. I love the universe. I have all of this love, right? But what I have gained over this last 6 months ish is that I truly have like this. I've been telling my friends, and I know this sounds terrible, but the universe is my bitch and I tell it what to do. Period. End of sentence. Like that's just it. And so if I approach this system with oh, please, sir, may I have some more? Like we're, in a Dickens play, it's not going to respond to that.
Yeah. There's something about not asking, right?
Yeah, it's about telling. It's about stating. It's about declaring. This is what I need to happen.
Now,
And I mean, when I do it, I'm doing it with the utmost gratitude, and love, but it's still it's more like I will not accept anything less than this thing that I have just stated.
And this is what I have noticed is, and then I'm going to bring up a situation that you will be very familiar with. I have noticed that it's cycles, and maybe that's how I feel about myself, but I'll notice there'll be a week where I can't go wrong. I can say it, it's happening, da da da. And then the next week, exact opposite. Do you find that, or you are on a consistent run now?
I do feel I'm on a consistent run, but with a codicil that they're for me anyway. And everything I say is for me. If it's not for you, that's okay. But the other thing that I have observed while I've been going through this period of time is that the things that maybe seem like they're not going right, that it's my response or reaction to them that determines their effect on my overall flow of creation, co-creation with the universe, right? It's like, so for instance, a guy turns out to be a jerk and you break up, you're not going to see each other anymore, like after a short period of time dating, right? But it's like intense, wonderful, and you have this great time. But then it completely flips, and your challenge at that point is to say no to anything that you don't want and to insist on having the kind of experience you want to have, and knowing, like, it's not, feel the feelings, but in the back of your mind, I always know, no matter how shitty something looks on the surface, every single time now, something better comes as a result of the shitty thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I wouldn't say that I'm just on all the time and I'm this perfect flow machine.
I know what you mean.
But it's just like when things do happen, I do not have the same reaction I used to. I do not have the reaction of like using the guy scenario, because I'm writing the accidental cougar book about my dating adventures and all that. But the guy scenario, like in the past, my reaction would have been something more like, the typical, where I'm like, I'm crying, I'm upset, how could they do this to me? I'm gonna eat ice cream and watch sad movies to torture myself some more for the next week. It was like an instant switch that flipped in my brain and went, oh, okay, this one wasn't for me. And I had a role to play in this experience with him, and I'm done.
That is the hardest thing for people, and especially doing readings, and especially when you're talking about love, people just want it to be done. Like there's a done, right? Like, who's the person, then I'm done. And it's like, nothing works like that.
No.
Nothing works like that, and you're not done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Every person leads to the next person.
Yes. Yeah, it truly does. I mean, whether it's this life or the next,
Yes. Okay. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk about a couple of things having to do with this, with manifestation for us. And also, I had something else attached to that. Whatever. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. How's that spiritual awakening going? I know. Don't worry. Help is here. HighlySpiritualPerson.com is a haven for spiritual misfits and empaths navigating spirituality and mental health. My friend Camille has a plethora of resources on her site to help you on your spiritual journey, even if you're just starting out. It includes individual and collective Reiki sessions, personalized guided meditations, sleep affirmation tracks, and so much more. Camille has so much to offer. She's going to be on my podcast in December. I can't wait to talk to her. Her blog posts and podcast episodes explore spirituality and are great for folks carving out their own path. She has written 2 easy to follow guidebooks, one on breathwork, and the newest book is called Manifestation is Easy, and it features 22 step-by-step manifestation techniques, as well as tips and advice on how to overcome the most common blocks and start changing your reality. Go to highlyspiritualperson.com. I promise you, you will get lost in how much information is in there. It's one of my favorite rabbit holes. All right, so we're back. And by the way, this is brilliant. I really think this is a brilliant podcast, and I love what you're doing, Andrea.
Thank you so much, hon.
So you and I have a similar situation with a parent.
Yes.
I'm not going to spend too much time on the description of this, but I have my mom left, and there is no happiness anymore. Like there is. I know this sounds awful, but people with parents with dementia will understand if she passed right now, it would be good for her and everyone. Cause I guess God has a different plan or knows when or whatever, but there's almost like no cheering her up anymore. And it's such a distress. She's in so much distress. In fact, when you were talking about the planet, that was all I could think of is how much distress she is, which is a lesson to me to learn to calm down and because when we get older, the things that are bad are going to be magnified. So,
yes,
I always try to pray for the best situation for her and me. And like I said, in my mind, if she was to pass, that's the best situation. I don't know if that's hers or God's, you know what I mean? We don't know.
Right.
But what would you manifest? Because you're a little bit in that same situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky one because you're not going to manifest that someone else passes away. That doesn't sound like good karma.
Exactly.
And I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I called us in the text when we were talking, listeners, I called us dementia orphans.
Yes.
Gen X's new claim to fame.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for us to be talking about these things as well, because there is a wave of this, like a tsunami coming at us and all the younger generations, because it's very complicated, and I have a lot of different theories about the whole dementia thing. But first of all, I'm so sorry that your mom is at that stage, because my mom has recently had like worsening sundowners, which we may have figured out part of what's causing that right now. But when they're in that state and there is no soothing or calming, it's just awful for them and for you. Yeah. And I, on my end, very similar. I ask for the highest good, what is best for everyone, but I will, honestly and fully tell you, because I know my mom and what she would also want. And I frequently am just saying, can we please just have a nice, easy, quick, painless death in her sleep of something before she gets to the point where it's unbearable.
Yeah.
So, I fully understand that, because it is just, it's soul crushing. There's no other word for it. It's very, very hard.
And I
found a lot of healing in it, but
yeah, I don't understand, but I do understand why people may drop off their parents and go, because, and I don't mean that in a bad way or a judgy way, because there is a certain point where, thank God I have my sister, where we're like, don't feel guilty, stop feeling guilty, because we can't do anything. And when we get her into assisted or into nursing, whichever one we can get her into when that happens, hopefully when I'm talking to you, when this comes out, we're moving her right now. It'll be much less, because at least we'll be like, okay, somebody's there all the time or something. We have a nurse that comes in now, but yeah, I don't want to get too much on this because it's just it's that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
It's exhausting. And that's exact part. A huge part of the sabbatical was my guides gave me a really clear message that they literally sent me the song A Hole in Your Boat from a friend of mine who does intuitive movement. She said, I don't know why they sent me this song. And anyway, it was like I had to stop doing my work so that I could get my life recalibrated. So, now I have more help at home with her. And so that is helping. But yeah, if there is no judgment to how anyone deals with this situation, because it is so labor intensive. And we've been sick 5 times during the fall because I didn't realize, and it took me a minute to get this, like months to get this, that having a loved one with dementia have to move in with you is a lot like having a new baby. And you have no idea what you're doing. You're not getting any sleep. You're exhausted all the time. You have no help. And so the hygiene and the awareness goes back to toddlers, so that I was not processing that I am really living with an adult child who is spreading their germs all over my house.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we've gotten that under control now. But anyway, it's like the worst backwards form of parenting, truly.
Yeah, and there's this other thing that happens because it's repeat question, and that seems easy, like I'll just keep answering it, or it seems easy, like, well, I'll do something while I'm answering that, and it is not easy. And then by the time you get to the 15th time, you want to go, why aren't you listening? And you have to realize, no, this is her first time hearing the answer. It's your 15th saying it. It is her first time. And it's so hard. I heard a woman get really stern with her mother in the airport, and I saw other people looking at her, and I thought, if anyone says anything, I'm going to stand up for her and tell them they don't know what she's going through. And she didn't hit her mother or anything crazy, but I was like, oh, I just want to tell that woman I get it. But
yeah, because it is like, I call it secondhand dementia, when you have to repeat the same thing over and over, like all day long. I start to not be able to have my own thoughts.
Yes, you do. You start to something. It's almost like it's worse. When I do tarot reading, readings are such concentration that there's a certain, you can only do a certain amount because you only have a certain amount of energy. But that is the same thing with the repeat dementia. It's like, it's a weird draining. It's so draining. But but anyways, to hope for the best, that's I guess to ask for the best for all parties involved, right?
Yeah. And have you noticed, because that's another thing with the time loops and timelines, is traveling in their brain.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
You clicked out for 1 second. The what in their brain?
Oh, time traveling. Are they time traveling in their brain? Because I know, like, my mom will bounce around to different ages and experiences from her life. And I've spending time with someone, it's like you start to notice. And so I've had those thoughts to myself, what kind of timeline visiting is she doing right now?
Yes, my mom doesn't quite have that. She doesn't have that yet. My mom was, I almost want to say, like 2 weeks ago, she was pretty conscious. There's good days and bad days, but now there's very, very few good days. Like, there's good moments, not days.
Yeah.
And it's getting less and less rapidly. But I know what you're talking about, that different type of dementia where they're they really are in a different time, or they really are seeing people in the room that aren't necessarily there. There was the nicest guy that was in, and he had Parkinson's, and I don't know if it was the medication or the Parkinson's, but he didn't have any dementia. He just had Parkinson's, and he was like, there's a lot of people that keep coming into my room. And he knew that they were not there, but they were there. And I always wondered, is he seeing ghosts?
Like, yeah, I think there's so much about it that we do not understand. But I definitely think that, like, the the barriers between timelines and memories, and also the veil, as we call it, gets very thin. So there's a lot of plasticity, ironically. But what was there was a situation, another thing you wanted to go towards when we got off of the dementia orphan topic?
Yes. So a couple of things. And one of them was the trickster spirit that like you're not really and then here I want to go back to something before trickster. When I feel like every once in a while when there is a major timeline jump that you were saying how you can see it in the Schumann resonance, I all of a sudden will get a flood of appointments that but I mean like doubled. I'm usually about booked for 2 weeks out, but it'll all of a sudden flood, like everybody knows something just happened. And
yes,
they need to regroup everything in their life. Does that ring a bell, or does that make sense?
Oh, that absolutely does make sense and ring a bell. And I see it on my end as well with my clients and whatnot. And just a lot of my contacts, patrons, different people. I'll be like, all right, I'll just wait for the messages.
Yes.
And I kept thinking that I had disabled my calendar, but then it turned out I hadn't. And I'm like, okay, universe,
I've done that before.
Put me in timeout for a reason. So what the hell? But it's definitely during those major shifts like that.
And also right after those, whole bunch of new Mandela effects.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because a friend of mine, we were talking about it after the last one, and she like, for me, I suddenly, a person that I've known for a couple years now, lives in the US and has for the whole time I've known her, apparently, but I swore she was in England and like on the other timeline I was on. And she is British, but I mean, for real, I know damn well and good I was on another timeline where she was not in Tennessee. So and then other patrons have those experiences. So yes, the Mandela effects. It gets, the more you become aware of it, it's almost like you just kind of get used to being aware of multiple things all at one time because it's very fluid.
Yep. And also, so now let's talk trickster spirit. Wow, the time is flying by on this podcast.
I know.
Talk about time loops. Yeah, I'm taping one right after you, so I keep looking at the clock and I'm like, really? What's happening? So the trickster spirit, which is very interesting, which means we never actually win this game because they change the board or they change the game. And I find that kind of interesting in a way. Like, I do think we might be Earth might really be the reality show for other planets or whatever, or mankind was some sort of an experiment. Maybe people were taking bets on how long we'd last or whatever. Right? But then they go, all right, so they figured it out. Now we got to move this set to Utica and see what happens in Utica. Or, you know what I mean? We're moving them to Siberia. Same thing as Utica. But I do think there is like, aha, are you ready for the next level? And it's a whole new set of not knowing.
Indeed. That is my experience of it as well. And that does seem to be how it works, and that trickster energy, it really does tie in with the concept of time loops. Whether it's a reality show, whatever it is. During a lot of my astral traveling and interdimensional communications and channeling and all of that, mostly what I have gotten is that yes, this is an experiment, and at least what I was told about it. And this, part of it I discussed on Meow podcast quite a bit. We talked about how the Orion Wars, if everything is all happening at once, that's still happening, right? Everything, like time actually isn't linear. Everything really is all happening at once. It's kind of like where you are pointing your frequency at any given time. But what I was told is that Earth is like, it was like an experiment to try to get us all to get along.
Right.
So ironically, like all the people from that star system, like a bunch of people came here for various reasons and in various ways so that we could be in similar biological forms, but still have the diversity of our celestial ancestry and learn to get along with each other. And so far, it's kind of been rough.
Yes, because I feel like I've often said this, I think Jess has said it too, is that social media was the experiment for telepathy. And what we found out is I don't want to know what half of the world, I don't want to know what most people are thinking. Turns out most of it's mean. But, I always reflect back, and I don't talk about this too much, and I don't want to bring this energy back to me, but the podcast I did with Diet, where she actually channeled a demonic being, there was so much information in that still comes back of aha, or like, again, it could be 10 truths for one lie, but but the insinuation was that demonics are bound here. They're bound here to teach us, but they don't go unless we learn. And I said, ask him how we're doing. And he was like, not good. He was kind of like, we are all stuck here and you guys need to get your shit together. It was kind of like, and I can't disagree with that.
Honestly, that makes so much sense to me. I have a pretty wild story with an ancestral curse, and
can you tell it in 4 minutes?
No, so I'll have to come.
You'll have to come back.
But the short version is that around 400 years ago, when I was the original start of this biological line that I'm part of this time around, I was a Romani, a gypsy woman, and I was cursed with this ancestral demon, and it has been following the women in my line for centuries. And the way this ancestral demon works is by getting to the woman, the spiritual, person, through the man that they're with.
Ah.
And so I got that out of my life and hopefully out of my family's line. But it was a crazy experience. My kids, I don't remember, thankfully, but when they were little, they saw it. And it's a wild story.
Okay, so just on another weird note, because this is the other thing I think that's happening, is talk about stuff being immediate or knowing. Because we weren't going to tell this story. The story just came up a second ago. This was not planned. You did not say it. When we were taping this second half, I always know when there is something really creepy in the room, and it's going to sound strange, but my shins almost start to freeze. Like something's wrong with the bottom half of my legs. When I get something on, it's a different feeling when I'm putting out information and it's right. I can feel it in my legs. But there's a different, almost a radiation feeling. And during the second half, while we were talking, something came in and I was like, what's in here? What just came in? And I think it was very interesting that thing wanted, well, I guess we talked about it, but it's not, I don't feel like anything happened, but I was like, what just came in this room? And then it's interesting that we told this story, but I think you did do it. You got the nice boyfriend now.
Yeah, except it's funny. I don't think this is the one that I was talking about the last time we talked, but, we'll have lots of new info about that, when more episodes are put out.
All right, and your book is out. So Andrea, Grooving Goddess, kind of everywhere, TikTok, Instagram. If they just look up Grooving Goddess, they'll find you, correct?
Yes, I'm everywhere, literally everywhere. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, Discord. It's just jokes that it's like the most unbelievable ability to name oneself on the internet that's ever because it's such a basic term. You would think someone somewhere would have used it, but every single platform that I go and have to join and set up a new account, it's still available for me.
That's great. That's great. Well, Rontowski is what I do with everything, but I'm trying to get verified, folks. So when you see the copycat accounts, and remember, I know you all know this, but I would never reach out and ask you for money or a reading. I can't believe how many times we have to say that.
I know, right?
Yes. All right, Andrea. And really, Andrea's Instagram, that's where I watch you more so than anywhere. Really, it's quite interesting, and it is really you can kind of plan around what you're talking about. Like, it really makes a difference.
Well, thank you so much, and this was such a great conversation. It is really a joy and something I'm so grateful for, to get to have this communication with you, because I think, it's always a collaboration.
Well, I always enjoy talking to you, my friend. So this is wonderful.
Me too. I love you so much.
I love you too. And let me know when that book is out, and we can continue with the curse story and the book and the whatever, and it'll all be great. All right. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week or on the Patreon or somewhere. And if you're not following me on Instagram or TikTok, I'm starting to put up a lot more funny haunted videos that seem to do pretty well. So follow me too. Have a great day. Bye, everybody. Paranormal Karen. She's a spooky kind of queen.